Hello there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about the Ty West Mia Goth trilogy, X, Pearl and Maxxine. A very loose trilogy where essentially they made one film, then they made a prequel, then they made a sequel. And so it's a trilogy in weird order. But it works. It's a organic trilogy about the way women are treated within entertainment and within just general society, and what images and ambitions within fantastical images do to people. Does it help them, hinder them? What does it do to people, and what does it do to different types of people? So essentially, the first film X was basically a one-off, where it was a case of Ty West wanted to do like a horror movie set in a limited location, which is a farmhouse, where basically people who are going to make a porn movie lie to the owners of the land who they hire the barn out from, saying it's just they're just shooting like some scenes for a movie, but it's just a legitimate movie. They don't realize it's a porn movie. When they do, all hell breaks loose. And what they don't realise is the woman inside the house called Pearl is insane and jealous of the youth because of her insanity and what's happened to her in the past. So it starts off as a film about what drives people to make porn movies. And it was like, it's money, basically. It's like, you need money, you need to survive. Some people just don't have much talent for anything else. It's like, I can do this. This will give me some money. And they don't think of the consequences of it all, and they've been really rebellious in the 70s. We're breaking down all the taboos. This is legitimate. You can put this in theatres, and it's like so. This is the 70s before the 80s came, and it just became a case of like judgment, and so it's about a certain time of filmmaking. So porn industry is a metaphor for horror, basically, when it's like a certain time of filmmaking where you could do these like outrageous films and not get punished for it, at least not too much. But in this film, because it's a horror film itself, you're going to get punished for it by the repressed society that decides, oh no, this is not good, this is not what we want. For their own reasons, which is basically they've got repression issues and they've got insanity issues, and it's a generational thing of the older generation versus the younger generation, and the older generation not understanding what the younger generation is actually about, because to them it seems repulsive and insane, and to the young generation just can't see what the older generation are like. They just think that they're insane, which they are in this case. But it is basically taking a lot of things that were in the country in the 70s and using the horror movie as a metaphor, really, for the kind of crash and thing. Because I think it was as a nostalgia for the 70s, where you got a lot of really great horror movies that had social value. Well, George Romero was making films, and he was making horror films, but he was making films about things, and horror was like the vehicle for it, because that's what you get funding for. And David Cronenberg was the same. You had John Carpenter films, which has a satirical streak. You had Tobe Hooper. You had lots of Larry Cohen. You had lots of directors doing different things, and the genre was open. And you'd get called disgusting. You'd Wes Craven doing Last House on the Left, which I think is disgusting. But it's like, well, other people don't, so that's fine. I just don't need to watch it. That's where I'm different from kill the people who make it. It's like, nah, just don't watch if you don't like it. So it's like they look at the extreme of the culture and just looking at a different time and how people find sort of rebelliousness in the porn world at the time, and just a sense of rebellion against the country, which is very repressed, and the rules for people are very repressed. So you get Mia Goth as Maxxine, who wants to be a star, and at this point it's hinted that she came from a religious family, and at this point it seems this is a way out to get some attention so she can go where she wants in the world a little bit better than what she's where she's at in her life, really. So, and then you've all these other people that the guy who's shooting it, who's got some pretensions to make it artistic, even though it's just a porn movie. You've got the producer director, who's an older guy who's seen Maxxine, who's just in it for the money, basically. He might say other things, but he knows this is a money making scheme. And you've got other people who are the actors who are involved in it all, and everyone's helping out and different things. And Jenna Ortega's the sound girl who gets dragged into this world of porn, and it's a really well made film. It's not the most amazing film, it's just a very well made film. It's like, basically, I like the other two films more than this, in some ways. Although I think this is more effective than Maxxine as an overall film. I think Maxine's a more interesting film. Because sometimes a flawed film can be more interesting. But it's a well-made film. I'd happily rewatch it. It's a good example of a good horror movie with some sort of social stuff in it. For me, the second one, Pearl's the highlight of the trilogy. A lot of people think that. I mean, it seems to be like either like X or Pearl more. Really, if you like this series. Some people like X more, some like Pearl more. I'm much more in the Pearl camp. I like Pearl more. Because it's about the old woman from the first movie, and it's about, well, how did she end up that way? And it's basically seeing her as a young woman, basically waiting for her husband to come back from World War One, and she's slowly going mad, and she wants to be a star. She thinks that's the thing that will solve all her problems. She's got a father who's looks like he's had a stroke and he can't do anything for himself. A mother who's very critical of her, and you see from her point of view of how awful they are to her and how they criticise her for doing anything, and why they not allowing her to go to a talent show, and why they're not allowing her to go and see the stuff in the movies. She meets a guy who's a projector in the movies, and he's played by the future Superman, David Corenswet. I can't remember how you pronounce his name. And Goth plays Pearl again, because Goth played Pearl and Maxxine in the first movie. Pearl was old his makeup. So she plays Pearl again as a young woman, and she's just a bit too happy. There's obviously something wrong with her, and you can tell before you see any signs, like when she has a sexually charged scene with a scarecrow, which is just strange. And you just sense this, she's a bit too much. And as the film goes on, you start to see that her family's not been cruel to her. Her family knows she's not. Her mother knows she's not mentally stable. That she has to be kept in the farm because she's not right. And they wait for the husband to come back so they can pass on to the husband and let the husband deal with it. Let him deal with the horrors of this girl. And it's like, it just, there's this sense of this girl, there's something wrong with her. And she thinks that the fantasy of movies, that's what will deliver her from her own mental illness. That'll make everything okay. And it's like, no, it won't. It really will not make everything okay. It's just a fantasy. And she has problems separating fantasy and reality. And fantasy becomes corrupted by, what happens within the reality as she starts to slowly go mad and starts killing people one by one. Everyone who messes with her, they're going to die. But it's all a psychological thing, really. It's more of a study of her and her mental state. I mean, it's very much influenced by Heavenly Creatures. And the funny thing is, X and Pearl were both shot in New Zealand. Pretty much just before the pandemic. Like, Pearl was shot during the pandemic and used, but they were already, I think they were already there. So they just had their isolation and stuff, and then they did the film as a group. Then went back to America. But it was a case of, they had a location. It was like, well, what do we do with this? And it was like, well, let's try and, they found funding for another movie. Because they already the crew there, and they just shot the movie like a Technicolor movie from that era. Well, actually, Technicolor didn't come in until like 15 years later from when it's shot, 15-20 years later from when it's shot. But it's what she imagines, so the Technicolor from that, her imagines of what colour would be like in movies becomes the thing for her. And because the movies were new then, they were different, they were disrespectful a little bit because they were the new thing and some people didn't approve of them. That new technology, that damn new technology, those damn kids up to no good. But the sense of, it was over, it's a fantasy that really um, gave people a sense of freedom from what was a lot of towns that had very strict values, and people were trapped within their towns and where they were and what was expected of them. And this was an escape. And for someone who was mentally ill, it became too much of an escape. So it's a film about us watching these fantasies that are movies and talking about these fantasies that are movies, like now with me, an idea of what does it do to you? Like, how are you actually escaping from your own problems watching this stuff? And can you separate the fantasy of it all from the reality of your life and what's going on in the world? And Pearl sees this without criticism. She sees the fantasy of the world without criticism and doesn't realize it is just a fantasy. It doesn't really nourish you the way real life does. There are no people in it, they're just fantasy figures. So you basically see people as fantasy figures, not the messy reality of what they are. So she misreads her mother as this cruel ogre when her mother's just trying to be strict to keep her in line because she knows Pearl has some psychological problems. And the film is about that kind of what seems as tough love is what seems as cruelty is actually tough love, and like the side effects of the fantasy of movies on what people think and how they think, because people need the fantasy because real life can be tough sometimes, but it's when you push it too far that's when you get into trouble, and that's what it's about. And a lot of time people push it too far. I mean, obviously, it's horror movies or it's this or that. It's the optimistic things that push it too far and make people a bit crazy, because that's like the optimistic stuff is what makes people think, oh, this could be what I can have too. I mean, no one's going to look at Freddy or Jason and think, oh, that's what I want out of life. Really, it's not going to happen. If you look at killers are nothing like horror movie killers. The wants and needs are very different from what you see in a horror movie. Well, dangerous stuff is optimistic stuff for certain people. But then again, for the mass society, the optimistic stuff is very helpful. As long as you put into place. It helps drive people to try and do things, but it can be dangerous. Because Pearl was contrasted with this other girl who's the sister of Pearl's husband, who is much healthier and is optimistic, is cheerful. She is nice to Pearl, and she's the healthy version of what Pearl wants to be. But Pearl is just more mentally ravaged and tight and controlled and crazy, and this other girl is just normal. And the best scene in the film is when Pearl finally breaks down and talks to her and sees what's going on in her head, and the girl's like, oh no, she's just a psycho. And you see it in her eyes, and then you go to Pearl, and Pearl does a whole speech, and you can sense what the other person's thinking, even though you can't see them, because it's so good. So yeah, Pearl's great. Pearl I very highly recommend. You don't even have to have seen other films to see Pearl. It's a standalone if you want it to be. Maxxine is the one which is informed by the other movies. It's about what happens after you're through a trauma, and it takes like 7 years later from X, where Maxxine is now survived the events of X. She's now a porn movie star. She's now moved into horror movie, which is the only place she can go into the mainstream. To get into the mainstream, she has to go via horror movies. So she gets a part in this new horror movie, which is a sequel to another movie that was made, and all about religious mania. So this is the 80s, where you get like in Britain you had the video nasties, in America you had the judgmental, crazy period of like the Reagan era where everything's satanic panic. So that's why this is really is a direct sequel to X, because X is about people thinking that they were going to be free of all this stuff, and Maxxine's about the kind of price you pay for this stuff. Again, beyond the craze of Pearl, it's actually about the kind of overall culture and what they want, and overall culture is as crazy as what you saw in Pearl. which is they want simplistic notions to make life easier for them. This is bad. These horror movies are bad. They cause all this trouble. It's like, no, they don't. It's just that's just an escape for some people. Yeah, there's lots of gore, but everyone knows it's gore. Everyone knows it's special effects. It's not real. It's not. Don't take it too seriously. It's just fun. It's entertainment. And it's about people who cannot quite see it that way. They cannot see that it's entertainment. They cannot see that this is just a medium that embraces the absurdity of life and death in a kind of very literal way. And they want meaning through religion or through what they see as like a healthy culture. I'm trying to have a healthy culture means I'm very intolerant and crazy about knocking back against people who they see as basically has immoral desires or likes things that they don't like, which is like you see gay characters, you see prostitutes, you see all the other things. And the prostitution thing is, yeah, that's not healthy, but it's what was created by unfair society, really. This is just the fact is that a lot of people aren't taken care of, so that's a bit of go-to to survive. And you get people who work in porn films, going to parties and things, and it's also them being rebellious against the constraints of society. So it's a sense of there's a problem within society, and some people take it to the extreme of judgment, and other people are taking it to the extreme of I'm going to rebel against it. And Maxxine's kind of beyond rebellious stage. She just wants the money and she just wants the fame, and she's trying to deal with a psycho seemingly stalking her and killing her friends. You've got the Hillside Strangler going around in LA at the time. She's getting stalked by Kevin Bacon as a private detective who's been hired by someone to track her down. And she's got this movie she's trying to shoot. And it's all studiedly cheesy. I mean, there's it's very influenced by De Palma and Body Double. I mean, the ending is basically they do riffs on what De Palma's doing in Body Double. And there's the other film called Angel Films, which I've not seen, that apparently they're influenced by as well, which is much more the street level culture of LA at the time. I mean, Body Double is the artifice of the culture and the craziness of it all. And apparently Angel Films are much more the street culture at the time. And you get both of them together. Now, the film is less streamlined than Pearl or X for plot, really. I feel there is too many plots floating around. Like, there's a couple of things that it feels like they need another draft just to adjust a few things and have things mix in a more cohesive way. You get feeling as there was a real desire to see this third film, and maybe they should have waited 6 months and just worked a bit more on the script before they shot it, just to get the script right. Because sometimes you feel there's a bit of repetitiveness, and you know, certain scenes feel like I'm beyond that now. I know what way I'm going with that. Now you can move to the next bit. And the finale feels as over the top in a fun 80s way, which is taking the mickey of the fact that 80s were so more realistic, but also had these really way over the top expressions of anger and almost like the repression of the culture coming out of this culture that was much more staid and tried to be respectable. And you had all these drug problems and everything else, and they'll just get explode, and all these kind of religious problems, they'll explode in the end. But you just have feeling that it's not quite managed as well as the other two films. Like, it just needs a bit more time to figure it out and then put it together. And I got a feeling as the script wasn't quite finished yet, and by the time you shoot everything, you can't go back and sort things if the script hasn't sorted them before. So there is that element where it's like, we need a lot more, because there's lots of really good scenes in here, lots of good supporting characters. Kevin Bacon is alright in the film as a sleazeball. You've got lots of other good actors playing smaller parts. Everything works really well. You get a sense of the exploitation film and how limited it is for some actors, but how it helps them anyway. It shows you how tough it is to be a horror film. And there's lots of interesting things going on. It's just like, it's too much, and but then Body Double had the same problem. I had too many things going on, and it was a bit disjointed, and now it looks pretty good because it was all the ideas. And this film will probably be the same way. It's like a flawed film, but there's tons of ideas. This one goes into like religious mania a bit more, and just a sense of the kind of culture that's crawling down on, you know, people who are different from the mainstream culture, which is what happens in every culture. So, as a good, exciting film, it's just not a great film. It's not as good as Pearl. But this trilogy it's a fun trilogy of films, very unconventional. I mean, look into the adult industry and the horror industry, and how horror's the only way up from porn. Really. So it's very interesting, lots of cool ideas about what fantasy does to people and how people can, like Maxxine, can see the fantasy, see the problems, and monetize it, and other ones like Pearl can get defined by it and go mad by it. And so it's like, because Mia Goth plays both characters, it's like a sense of the two different ways you can deal with the fantasy. Either you can use it for your own good, or you can fall into the madness of it. And even there, you get a sense of Maxxine hasn't fully escaped some of the craziness of the whole thing. It's just that she knows to put a distance between her and it, while Pearl doesn't. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you go and watch these films. They are all very good. And that's me for now. Bye.